All right, great. I'm excited to have Jim Nestor on with us today. Jim, welcome to the podcast here. Excited to have you.
Same
Um,
here, Nick. Thank you.
awesome. So, I think first let's kick it off. Like, Jim, tell us a little bit about the line of work you're in, and kind of how did you get wrapped up into that industry?
Yeah, the company Nestec LLC provides large industrial air pollution control technologies for all types of industrial air pollution control applications. Kind of got into this space back in the early 90s. Was working for a company that designed HVAC process duct systems
Mhm.
and met a few folks that had left the company and went with a startup in the environmental space. So in 1990, I also went over to that company and started learning about thermal oxidation and how it's effective in breaking down volatile organic chemicals that emit into the air off of all types of industrial manufacturing processes.
Wow. So Jim, I mean, like the background and the genesis to me is it's such like a strong entrepreneurial story, right? You build an expertise in an area, you see an opportunity, and you take the risk to start the business. And how long ago was that, Jim?
So Nestec officially started in 2005, but I
Okay.
started my career in this space in 1990. And a lot
Okay.
of the activity was driven by the Clean Air Act Amendment of 1990, where lots of other industries were targeted and standards were developed by EPA to recommend the best available control technology to both economically and effectively reduce emissions from all these different industrial applications.
Yeah. And so Jim, like, I've known you for a while. I've kind of seen Nest Tech really grow into, the business it is today. What in your mind, what do you think like was one of the biggest or biggest challenges you really faced in getting the business from startup to ultimately a successful partnership with, PE backed equity? What do you think like the biggest challenge, in the business you faced was?
Well, I think the biggest challenge was even though I had been in the industry a long time and had lots of companies and engineers that knew me, there's always a stigma that you're small, you're starting out, so you really have to establish credibility and work and leverage that credibility from customer to customer, from industry to industry, and it's really keeping your nose to the grindstone, getting out there, making doing the marketing, hitting the trade shows, and really establishing yourself and getting over that hurdle that yeah, you've been in the business a long time, you have great people working for you, but you're still considered a small company.
Yeah,
So big companies, they get a little concerned that the financial backing's not there. So our partner, our bank, uh, I'll just say Univest was fantastic for us. And
that's great.
they really helped us grow. We had unique opportunities that we presented to them, and they were 100% supportive along the way to allow us to reach, beyond what maybe would be considered normal financial strength,
Mhm.
so that we could then get over those hurdles, have flagship installations that were larger in nature, and just continue to leverage that as we, penetrated bigger companies, bigger markets, et cetera.
Yeah, it's such an important part of like scaling a business. And I almost think like you continue to hit these inflection points as you grow, right? WellFull Bernardo Wealth is about to hit our 10-year anniversary. And in the early stages, I would say the same thing. We're a lot younger company than Nestec, but you're working for the credibility, you're working hard to grow. And then I think as you kind of get to these certain sizes, the market starts to understand you've got the credibility. And I don't want to say it gets easier, but you maybe face different problems than just, hey, will people be comfortable with me? And obviously that's where, a great banking institution can help you, scale and move and grow. Um,
Well, I also think that, you know, treating your vendors properly, treating your customers properly, being honest with them, even if it's something they don't really want to hear, but it's telling them what they really should do.
Yeah.
And again, the vendors are a very big part of our success. Having good credit history, treating them properly, not trying to squeeze
Mhm.
every penny out of them, let them, do their business and support you. And then also, obviously, treating your employees, respectfully and, making sure that they know that they're a very big part of the growth and the success of the company.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's culture, right, Jim? And your culture, I always think about culture is not just external. It's not just how you treat your clients, right?
Yep.
It's that your clients can see you take care of your vendors, you take care of your employees. You've got an environment that's really comfortable and collaborative. And to me, that speaks volumes to the market about what you're all about, that you really care. And you don't just care about the sales and the growth, you care about the people and the process and the experience along the way. I think like some of the best businesses out there, it starts with culture first, and you realize that, and you realize if you have a bad culture, that man, that's really disruptive to the overarching, kind of goals of the business.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think with the culture also is early on, I was out in the field. I was, getting my hands dirty. I was part of the crew. And when your employees and maybe some that you've brought in that don't know you as well, they see that you're rolling up your sleeves and you're, getting it done right next to them.
yeah,
I think that sends a really good message as well.
servant leadership, right? Like, I may be the owner of the company, but I'm not afraid to take out the trash or sweep the floors also, right? Like, I think
Absolutely.
that sends the right message to everybody that, there's no crazy hierarchy here that says we can't be in relationship with each other for one reason or the other. Yeah, I love that. That's super important. Jim, switching gears a little bit, I think one of the really cool parts of your story, having just gone through this new partnership and kind of successfully exiting, and now a new chapter was, about 5 years ago, you were pursued and potentially selling the business at a much, smaller size and scale. Tell me about that experience. Kind of what it was like, and then what happened after with hockey stick growth to really, propel the business to a much, higher level in a very short 5 year period of time.
Yeah, so probably about 7 or 8 years ago, we saw that we were getting a lot of traction in the wood products industry, but there were some technologies that go hand in hand with our primary thermal oxidizer that would allow us to bundle a couple technologies. So we started looking at companies really worldwide to partner with. And one of those companies was out of Europe. So they engaged with us and they came over and talked to us. And, we were still pretty small at the time, but we had gotten people's attention, knocked down some nice work. And so, they had an investment banker. We, didn't approach it the right way like we did this past time. And, we had some advisors, but they really weren't M&A people.
Mhm.
So, after all of that, getting our numbers together, kind of really doing a cobbled together effort, they made an offer that was just lower than what we had kind of internally agreed would be sort of the threshold. And
Mhm.
thank goodness that they came in lower because they would have gotten a steal. Um, and then shortly thereafter, we just went our separate ways, and they tried to do some things unsuccessfully without us. And we kept looking for other partners. We partnered with a company in Canada, and that lasted a little while. But then, I've always kept in touch with, let's call them friendly competitors. So you go to trade shows and you talk to your competition, and you actually develop a little bit of a relationship with some of these folks. Well, about 5 years ago, one of those gentlemen, which is now my president, reached out and said it's time to make a move. So we put a package together, and he brought with him the technology that we now are a leader in, called a wet electrostatic precipitator. And this basically takes the submicron particulate out of the airstream prior to going into the thermal oxidizer. So bundling those technologies allowed us to go from, let's say, closing a $5 million job to closing a $20 million job. So it
Wow.
really gave us that hockey stick growth by now bidding on the complete package rather than just a piece where they would then have to go to someone else for the other piece.
Yeah, I
So
mean, that
over the last 5 years, Jamie has brought in a lot of people that he worked with primarily in that technology, and it's just blended so well with the young, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, experts in their field to really blow a lot of oxygen over what was already very
yeah,
successful on the thermal oxidizer side.
that's great. Yeah, I mean, that's I love to hear that, kind of you stayed super disciplined in, 5, 7 years ago in the whole we're looking at a transaction. I think a lot of people too get wrapped up in that and emotionally go, "Oh, well, I've been down the road and now, why wouldn't I sell or whatever?" But I think maintaining that discipline, you and your partners being like, "No, this isn't the right thing for us." Regrouping, pulling Jamie and his team in and seeing the hockey stick growth. I mean, obviously it paid off massively for you and your partners and Nestec, and now
Yeah.
thinking about the future. So what was really then the trigger here recently that, said, "Hey, it's time for this, PE back partnership." What were kind of the thoughts going into that process, Jim?
Well, really, the trigger was my original partner, Rick. He's about 8 years older than I am, so he was real close to retirement. But part of the strategy in bringing Jamie in was actually the initial transition plan. We brought them in, we created an opportunity for them to buy shares off of Rick, some of the other older owners. But with the hockey stick growth, the value of the company just got beyond what they would be able to do to buy out Rick, let alone start
Yeah,
taking me down. So, I approached the young owners. They were somewhat adverse to PE from past experience, but I explained to them that this is something that's important. We're going to be in control. We're going to really put the effort in to find the right partner. We're going to do it the right way by interviewing investment bankers and all along the way be active in making sure that when we get to the point of a handful of companies that we need them to understand what our expectations are as much as the expectations that they'll put on us for future growth and a second potential sale.
yeah, yeah. I think we, you think about that life cycle of succession. I mean, I see that all the time, and I think, right, the generation, Jim, that you're in faces that challenge, right? Succession, a lot of people think, oh, that's about the next generation and how do they run the company and operate it. But succession is also an equal part about money and affordability, right? And can that next generation afford to take out the generation ahead of them? And
Right.
with the way valuations have been, with PE in markets, it's a huge gap or delta between like what your value of the business could be on the PE side versus internal succession. And even with a discount for internal succession, you still are leaving the next gen in like a very high risk, situation. You then start to think about seller finance notes and have we even really gotten the risk off the table and given, the exiting partners the liquidity that they need to feel good about moving on. So it's a real challenge in the marketplace. And I think this the no offense to you, Jim, but that they say the boomer generation, you're probably a little younger than that. So I'll take you out of that. But
No,
that
I'm the
generation,
last. I'm the last year of the baby boomers.
okay,
64.
all right. Well, there you
I
go. You
am
put
a I am a baby boomer.
okay. All right. So there's that generation that's coming into this new phase of saying, okay, time for me to move on or retire, or in your situation, take a different role. And that inflection point is a big deal and it's a big challenge. And we're dealing with that with clients all the time in succession, in selling businesses. And so it's kind of a recipe of like, what's the right succession plan with people? And then how do we match the financial side of that as well so that everyone feels validated? And I also think everyone takes the right amount of risk off the table. Seller finance notes can be great, but they can also screw a lot of things up. If you exit a company and give the debt to the next generation and something goes awry. So there's a lot of factors in there that, that are at that need to be considered, need to be thought through. Um, beyond just the people element. Jim, talk a little bit about your team in the exit. I obviously interacted with some of the tax advisors as we were planning through situationally how, the business transacts, moves on, what your tax picture looks like pre-sale, post-sale, and all the planning that went in. But talk about the team. How vital and important was that from your perspective?
Yeah, the team was really critical. And, if you've never gone through it before, you really don't know what the expectations are for the level of detail, everything from compliance on your website through, financial support, legal support, accounting support, all the historical information with regards to customers, vendors. So having the right people. Our CFO at the time, we were going through CLA as a part-time CFO, but he was working probably 60 hours a week. Couldn't have done it without a really good CFO. And then, the investment banker, some of the other consultants that we had to make sure, we're talking, we're communicating, we're making sure everybody's on the same page, we're prepping properly for management presentations, what to say, what not to say. So there's very much a strategy, and having, you know, lots of partners involved, and knowing when to bring others under the tent at the right time to support the immense amount of information that's going to be requested once you get to the LOI phase and diligence. It's just really a very thoughtful process to navigate things properly.
Yeah. Jim, did you I know we talked a lot through the whole, kind of the life cycle of transaction from LOI through due diligence and kind of I like to call it deal fatigue, right? Where, you're
Yeah.
in the due diligence process and I mean late nights, early mornings, you're constantly getting peppered for more information. Some information's basic, other, red lines and contracts, critical terms, etc. Tell me about deal fatigue and how happy you are to be past that.
Yeah, deal fatigue was brutal. We were supposed to close the end of December. We didn't end up closing till February 3rd. And you're at a point where, are you going to pull the plug because they missed a date? Or is progress being made satisfactorily so that you just hang in there and grind through it? But I think the investment banker plays a big role in kind of telling the buyer, like, enough's enough, because they just will keep asking for more and more. They'll drag in additional months. As a month goes by, they want to update, the financials. So, finding an investment banker to, lead the effort, and one that is willing to really be firm and clearly state expectations and advocate on your behalf, which is what they're being paid for, is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
But I
deal
feel
fatigue
great
is
now. I mean, it's there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think we picked the right partner, Angelino Group, and
right.
they're in the environmental space. They have lots of really impressive advisors that are part of their partner companies and board. So yeah, we're all the original partners at Nestec are still in the company, running the company, and tapping into contacts that Angelino has, and really putting the burden on us to make sure that they're participating with assisting with the growth over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, and you'll be a critical role, play a critical role in that, which I think is great. I mean, I think from a lifestyle perspective, Jim, we've retired clients who've sold a business and, it's been something very simple that they could walk away from immediately. Others like yourself who are going to hang in for a couple years to kind of see the next iteration of growth with a PE capital partner behind you. What I think is really cool, you said this to me right after the deal closed in one of our meetings, and you said, even though I went from, my illiquid business to now liquidity, meaningful liquidity in the portfolio, you're like, my life hasn't changed. And I think that's really cool. And I think that says a ton about Jim, how you look at this stuff. where it's, your wealth isn't defining you. It's really just something that you've worked your butt off to achieve, and the success. But it wasn't about a certain number. It wasn't about a certain lifestyle. Tell me a little bit about just kind of your perspective as it relates to that. That you coming into my office and it's like I don't feel like all of a sudden my life has changed. That I think is unique and different. I think a lot of people would love to hear kind of your perspective.
Yeah, as you go through your career and you get to a point where your company's successful, I think having a good work-life balance is important. And I think the reason I feel like not as much has changed is because I did focus on the work-life balance, making sure that I did the activities that I enjoy, whether it be hunting or fishing or travel. So and really, when you own a company, it's not a 9 to 5 job. So
Yeah.
the work life balance allows you to look at a 7 day week instead of a 5 day week. So
Mhm.
if you want to do something on a Monday or Tuesday, then you're going to work at night, you're going to work over the weekend. So there's never an off switch. And even when, let's say, I'm at my place in Canada, the laptop's open.
Sure.
I come in from fishing. I check my emails. You never turn the switch off. So I think that's allowed me to feel the way I feel now because it's not like I've missed out on doing things over the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. I think that's great, and I think sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. I kinda kid around about that. I have the same situation where it's like I can always be connected, which is great, but I can always be connected, which is difficult but I think that discipline, like you said, and the balance of figuring it out, what works best for you and the company and your family and your lifestyle, and making that a high priority and not getting wrapped up into a full 7-day work week where you're really grinding it out so hard that then ultimately I think what happens from a lifestyle perspective, if that is how you kind of operate, and you go through a transaction like you just went through, man, you come out on the other side and your whole entire life is disrupted. Right. I see this with just retirees too that aren't necessarily selling a business, but everything that they knew in their past life is now basically gone from their life, and it's almost like you're trying to recreate yourself at in your 60s or late 50s or whenever it is that you decide to move on. So I admire that, Jim. I think that's really cool, and I think that's a discipline that some people take for granted, and sometimes you get a stigma of, oh man, this balance or whatever. What about the commitment to the company? But standing for that and not letting it really dictate or change, I think is really important. And obviously, in my mind, just kind of working with you, seeing that, you can tell you're just genuinely fulfilled with the balance that you have with the company, with the personal lifestyle. So, congrats on that. I think that's
Thank
something
you.
that's non-monetary. It's really just a personal kind of trait. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I
Um,
just will just add one thing. When you go through your career and your customers in some cases become your friends, they're calling you up, they trust you, you're solving problems. It's not like you're out cold calling and beating doors down to find business at this stage of my career.
yeah,
Someone calls, big companies, little companies, whenever they call, I sincerely try to solve or help them or steer them in the right direction. So when you get to that point, it's very rewarding. I love what I do. I as an engineer, it's every project's different. I've seen so many different things, how they're made. So it's just been a um, really fulfilling career. Um, on top of the fact that a lot of the customers have, at the end of the day, become somewhat business friends.
yeah. Well, it's so enjoyable. I look at my career the same way, Jim, is, working with people like you and others, it sometimes doesn't feel like work. It's like you're problem
Yeah.
solving, you're providing solutions and value, you're building relationships, you enjoy the people that you're working with. That's a real blessing, I think, in just in general, and to make a living doing that is really the cherry on top, to the whole situation. So,
Yeah.
I would say this too, like, along that same line, Jim, what would you say to an entrepreneur, um, who is where you were 5 years ago? Any advice, any thoughts before we, hang up here?
I would just say uh, put the plan together, be aggressive, be thoughtful, and be do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So when you're at that point where the business is coming, some outside factors are leaning in on you your way, grab the opportunity and go for it. If you pause or hesitate, it may go right by you.
Yeah.
So when you see the opportunity to grab a good employee that isn't happy at a competitor, or even if you don't have something that you exactly know what they're going to do, you know that they're going to be an asset to the company. So getting the good people, building the right team, taking advantage of these peripheral opportunities that just kind of come and go in a fleeting moment. So just be aggressive, identify those opportunities, and don't be scared.
Love it. Yeah, don't be scared. I like that one. Go after it. Now's the time, right? So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate your time. Congratulations on the
Thank
transaction
you.
and all the success. Love working with you. Love the family environment here, and let's keep it going.
Yeah, thank you for all the help that Bernardo Wealth Planning's done for me personally and the company. You managed our finances on extra cash and always gave us good guidance. And I know the other partners value you and your team's efforts. Very efficient. And just thank you again, and Bernardo Wealth Planning for everything you did to help us get to this point.
Yeah, it was our pleasure, Jim. It was our pleasure. So thank you.